Hello and welcome to Exploring Cinema. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
Today we're talking about Possession, directed by
Mhm.
Andrzej Zulawski. I think I got that mostly
Nailed it.
right.
Oh,
Yeah,
nailed it. Yep.
perfect. Definitely. From 1981, the sort
Mhm.
of cult classic horror movie that's it's definitely one of those movies that a large chunk of the movie watching world, I feel like, hasn't even heard of because it just wasn't available for a really long time.
Yeah, for sure.
So before we get into some of the reasons for that,
Mhm.
Dylan, would you like to tell the people what Possession is about?
Yes, Possession, a drama horror from 1981. A woman starts exhibiting increasingly disturbing behavior after asking her husband for a divorce. Suspicions of infidelity soon give way to something much more sinister.
Yes, much more sinister.
Quite sinister.
Yeah. So I was really excited going into this one. Neither of us had
Me
seen it,
too.
and it's
Yeah.
got a huge reputation amongst cinephiles. I
Yeah.
think it's fair to say one of those movies with, you know, a lot of very high reviews, even though it hasn't been seen by a ton of people.
Yep. Lots of 4.5s, fives on Letterboxd.
Yep, from people I follow and read a lot of
Mhm.
their stuff, and a lot of people seem to really love this movie. So, really quickly, for those of you who maybe haven't heard of it, like I said, directed by Andrzej Zulawski from 1981, a minuscule budget of $2.1 million and an even more minuscule box office of $1.1 million. We like doing movies that didn't really make any money here at Exploring Cinema.
Sometimes that's a sign of real cinema, real art. It lost a cool $1 million. Just
Yeah, exactly. It must have been legit. Pretty well reviewed for the most part. 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, 7.3 on IMDb, 4.1 on Letterboxd, and it is the number 15 horror movie of all time on Letterboxd as well.
wow. Okay.
So that's interesting. And then, I mean, I think we need to talk. I could have brought this up in like tidbits, but I feel like we need to talk about right off the top that this movie was banned in the UK
Yep.
when it came out, and it had 40 minutes of its like 2 hour and 5-ish minute runtime, or 2 hour and 4 minute runtime in the US was cut down to 81 minutes.
Wow. The US version?
The US version, yes. So the uncut version wasn't available in the US until 2021.
Wow.
And the movie was banned in the UK until 1999. So there was this
Okay.
whole wave of I did a little bit of reading on this of what they call kind of video nasties,
Mm.
where there was this movement or people kind of noticed that there weren't as many restrictions on what could be released on like tape
Mm. Okay.
as there were on what could be released in the theaters. So there were just a lot of these movies that didn't have these restrictions on them that were just kind of thrown out there.
Mm.
Now, you and I have both watched this, and I mean, there's some stuff in this movie, but the idea of banning it just seems insane to me.
Oh yeah, by today's standards, definitely would not get banned. I mean,
Right. But this was the, Thatcher Reagan era in these countries, I believe. So,
Mm-hmm.
I hear that and I can understand it, but I still just find it ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So that was it looks like they kind of passed some new stuff that allowed them to ban a lot of these movies. Some distributors for these movies got in actual trouble. There's like
Really?
kind of a list of those, and then there's a list of other ones that were just banned and nothing really happened to the people who made them, and that's what Possession seems to be on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's part of why this movie didn't really make any money. It's part of why it's such like kind of a cult hit, or there's a big cult following around it, because anytime you hear, especially about a horror movie, I feel like that genre more than any other, if you hear that it was banned, or like there are a
Yep.
lot of horror movies that love to grab little snippets for the like promotional material, like a little quote of somebody saying like, people were so like disturbed by this that they walked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's nothing really that makes horror fans more curious
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
than hearing
Good
that a
point.
movie was like either banned or so disturbing or offensive that people just left the theater in the
Yeah.
middle of it. They couldn't handle it or they were offended by it or whatever. So it's a movie that because of that, I think has it still has life because it's just got this kind of asterisk attached to it,
Mm-hmm.
that an
Mm-hmm.
entire nation was like, nobody can watch this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's intriguing. And it didn't come out in the US, like I mentioned, the uncut version, until Shudder acquired it
Mm.
in 2021. And it was one of those movies where if you wanted to see the uncut version, you just had to kind of get lucky, and maybe a random theater would show it like once a year,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
could flock to the theater. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's interesting, and kind of now that we watched it, like I guess it's one of those things where I guess if I'm looking at the standards they were using, I
Mm-hmm.
can understand it if you're banning this kind of stuff. But it's
Yeah.
ridiculous to ban this movie.
Oh yeah, I'm kind of surprised. I actually didn't know that had been completely banned until you just told me right now, and I'm surprised by that.
I
I
mean, I think the sex with an octopus monster probably
Oh, is
has
that what we're
something to do
calling
with
it? An
it.
octopus monster?
I don't know. What do you want to call it? You got something better? I'm all ears.
I was gonna go with some sort of like it's like a mimicking monster almost, like some sort of
Well, right, but it's like very tentacly.
yeah. I don't know if I get octopus tentacle vibes. I'm trying to think what kind of tentacles. Yeah,
All
but it
right.
does
Well,
have
I'll
tentacles. I'll think
let
about
you
that.
ruminate on that for a
Hmm.
while.
Hmm.
Before we get to our opening statements, want to remind everybody to like the video. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel.
Hmm.
We got a lot of horror movies coming up that we're going to be doing discussions on over the next month for the rest of October. And then we do about one of these a week, kind of, looking into doing some other smaller content that we can put out on a
Hmm.
fairly regular basis as well. But if you don't want to miss any of our discussions on some of these obscure horror movies or anything else, really, subscribe to the channel and you will be notified. And then with that, our next movie, which I think
Yes.
I think will be a much more interesting discussion,
Hmm.
is Cure from 1997, currently streaming on the Criterion channel. This is one that you and I have been looking forward to watching for a really long time. I feel like the last couple of years, it's been on the list and we just haven't really gotten to it. And
Yep.
so kind of stamping it in on
Hmm.
the schedule
Hmm.
for Exploring Cinema for October, I think was the right move. So I think that's going to be a really fun episode.
Yeah, I think Possession and Cure to knock them off back to back is good. They've been on my
Yep.
watch list for a long time.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
So with that, opening statements, I can go first,
You go
and
first.
I'm just going to go with the first thing that came to my mind after we got done watching this, which I will say we watched this together, which I found essential.
Yes, agreed. Hmm.
This is not a movie I would necessarily recommend watching alone.
I mean, yeah, unless
Mostly
you're
just
one of the people
because
who love it and claim that they rewatch it all the time because it's so good. Which,
right, there are a lot of those people, it looks like. But
yeah,
my opening statement is just that this is a lot.
yeah,
There's so much going on in this movie. Everybody's emotions are at like a 10 for the
oh,
entire thing.
yeah, yeah,
There's kind of a lot going on, and it's one of those movies that I think you can watch and tell, like, okay, there's a lot of allegorical stuff happening here, but what exactly is this about?
yeah, yeah.
And those can be interesting. And I think I at least got done with this movie, I'd say sort of understanding the hype and not really buying it myself. I
I
didn't
agree with
hate
that.
it,
Yeah.
but it just for me, it felt like something that, like, okay, I'm glad I've seen it. I don't really feel the need to watch this again.
Hmm.
Maybe I'll read a little bit about it just to see some interpretations because, like I said, it's a lot and it's strange.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of an onslaught of like nonstop anger and screaming and weird
Shock.
monsters eventually.
Yeah, some shock factor with the monsters and
Yeah.
with the monster. Yeah, it's definitely a lot. I think that's a
Yeah.
good way to put it. Yeah, my opening statement is almost an opening list, but I think you'll get the point.
Have at it.
So Possession is it's a deep cut cult classic horror film. It stars a young Sam Neill. It has a renowned performance from a female lead who I did not know her name before this, but you'll hear it a lot in this review, and that is Isabel Adjani.
Yep.
It has innovative camera work. It has a plot with a bold paranormal angle It's set in a cool setting during the Cold War, right along the Berlin Wall, and it's been on my watch list for years. And all of those things are true, and I was just underwhelmed. I don't know, it just didn't quite hit for me. Like I for
Yeah.
one totally see the formula and why
Hmm.
it does have such a strong following. And now hearing in more detail about how it was banned and how hard it was to find, and I think it sounds like maybe that has added to the lore
I
and
think
kind
so
of
too.
right, like who knows, alternate reality where this wasn't banned at all, would this how strong would it have the same following? But yeah, I could see that what was before me was totally amazing for someone. It wasn't working for me. It just felt I just kind of got it felt like it kind of spun its tires in the middle of the movie, a lot of just yelling and kind of having the same argument and the same type of yelling over and over. And maybe that was for effect, because when I read about it, it's, people have interpretations about how it's all about, or it's all about divorce, and it's what it's trying to say about, and maybe what he's trying to say about divorce is it is kind of like that for a period. There's a lot of yelling and having the same fights over and over. But like, I don't know. I mean, just compare this to like Marriage Story or something. I don't know. It
I
just
was just gonna say it's kind of like Marriage Story if Scarlett Johansson was just like protecting a weird gooey monster.
Yeah, someone in Letterboxd said Marriage Story, but directed by Lars Van Trier,
Oh God.
which is kind of like, um,
That,
and I guess that makes me just the last part of my opening statement is it feels kind of like a movie that would come out today on A24,
yeah.
and some people would really like it, some people probably wouldn't, but it would. I don't think it would be elevated to the number 15 best horror film of all time. So I think I feel like it's getting a lot of credit for the background of the movie and the lore and how hard it was to find. And they released a version that was only 81 minutes long. If you saw that and you liked it, and then you saw the 2 hour version and it was just an expansion of everything that you already loved, I bet you would be like, oh my God, this is the best thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
But I just felt like me and you going into it with such high expectations with just, I don't know, it just didn't quite feel, it didn't live up to the hype.
I agree with that. Like again, I can see it and I think I kind of get what it's about, and if that
Mhm.
clicks for you, I can see that. Just there are enough moments where if it's clicking for you where you can just kind of have those like holy shit
Yeah.
moments in this movie, but if you're
Mhm.
just kind of not feeling that wavelength, it's
Mhm.
just kind of eh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with that, onto defining moments. I mean, there's one obvious one here that we just have to talk about right away, I
Yes, that
think,
everyone talks
because we're
about when
both
they
going
think
to
of
have
this
it.
movie. Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and that is the scene in what is it, like a subway tunnel
Subway station.
hallway, subway station?
Yeah, I just put down subway yelling.
Yeah. There's one recent Letterbox review that just says, "Girl, stop screaming."
But there's
Uh,
another one that says, Isabella Johnny invented acting in that subway scene,
yeah,
you know?
it's very impressive. I did
Mhm.
read after the movie that was some people. Maybe it's just straight up what it is, but I read some people interpreting that as like a miscarriage.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Um, I guess while we were watching it, I kind of thought it was her trying to, because this is not all the way through the movie yet, so we don't really know where it's going at this point, and we don't know quite what her relationship is with this thing,
Mhm.
and like if
Mhm.
she's possessed or
Yeah.
if she's just protecting this thing or what it is. So to me, that like as I was watching it, I thought it was her trying to like get that thing out of her.
Okay, yeah.
But maybe that's wrong too. I don't know. That like I will give the movie this. It certainly has a lot of like jumping off discussion points, which I think is probably another big part of the appeal.
Mhm.
But I mean, I don't know what else to say about that scene other than the acting was crazy and
Yeah.
amazing, and that scene was just insane.
Yeah, and just the commitment to it, and,
Yes,
and for 1981, very, very bold, and, kudos to the movie for
absolutely.
that. Yeah, that's something you don't forget.
For sure. And then for me, I guess just also kind of I thought the best parts of the movie for me were just like anything happening in that sort of abandoned house where she's protecting the monster.
Yeah.
Most of that stuff really worked for me. And that was
Mhm.
kind of the area where I was like, okay, it took us longer to get here than I thought it would, but now we're here and everything that's happening in this building is working.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like, I don't know, you could pick any of them. Pick the first time we see it, the first time that we like sort of see that something's there, and she just immediately kills the guy to protect that thing. Like,
Yeah.
there's no hesitation whatsoever.
Yeah.
That fits really well, kind of with the toxic marriage metaphor. I was just going to get into questions. We can talk about what we think that monster means.
Yeah, for sure. I got
Those
a
were
few.
kind of the best moments for me, and just the defining ones, and the ones that really stuck with me.
Yeah, the first time when we get to go in with the detective guy pretending to inspect the windows, and we get to see what's going on in there, and the camera work, and just kind of, and him, the way he just bangs on the door mercilessly until she answers.
Yeah.
That was really well done. Subway scene for sure. I did have the karate chop from Heinrich, just because
Oh,
that sent me and
yeah.
you just dying.
Yeah, or the wives.
Well, yes, that's terrific too. It seems like they were kind of overacting or acting in a theatrical way almost. It was a lot so expressive, so that led to some pretty funny moments, some Sam Neill line deliveries that were just like, come on, like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, all the actors were very committed.
for sure. Oh yeah, and Heinrich, when he's drunk, the way
And
he
doing that weird, like, dance, slapping the wall,
twirl,
spinning
slap the
thing.
wall thing. Yeah,
I
that
have
was
no idea
bizarre.
what that is, but the next time I'm around you and I'm drunk, I'm just gonna start doing that.
And I'm like, oh guys, it's the Heinrich from
Yeah.
Possession, 1981. I have the monster, the sex scene, just because it's just shocking and
Stamped into your
stamped
brain
in,
now.
like, well done,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's for sure. I have the just the very brief moment when the detective's boss is looking for him, and
Yep.
he asks Sam Neill, like, hey, have you seen him yet? And then we get the very quick but very touching moment where he reveals, like, he also lives with me, and then he just walks away. Like, it was very well done. I felt that. I think I turned to you, Nate, at the moment, and
Yep.
at the time it was like all this crazy intense stuff that's happening in the movie, like that little tiny moment I actually felt like more. Like,
Yeah, I think maybe part of my issue with this was that, kind of similar to, like, The Shining, which
mhm.
is sort of a hot take, that I don't really like The Shining very much. And my big
Hot's
issue
one word for it.
is that he's is that he's just, like, already a dick at the beginning of the movie. I don't feel like I never felt the connection on what I'm supposed to feel on, like, this marriage that they lost. And I feel like
Yeah.
this is already on the rocks by the time we meet either of them. And maybe that's part of why that moment with the detective and his boss stuck out to you, is because it was just an actual moment where you felt like these people care about each other,
Yeah.
other than
Yeah.
just kind of like saying they're married is supposed to be enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Saying and yelling, "We're married."
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess moving on to questions, I was
Mhm.
just going to ask, like, what on earth you think that monster is supposed to represent?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the easiest one is just to say it's all about divorce, I think.
Yeah, like a
And that
toxic
represents
marriage.
just the whatever one someone might lust for outside of a marriage, just the representation of, kind of the how it's just sex. So much of it is like the sex part of it, and it's like
Okay.
like I think that part of why this is so bold is because it really leans into like those nasty feelings of like cheating, and like, like not only is she cheating on you, but now like you actually have to see it, like, oh, and then like the twist ending where it's just like, it's formed itself into you, and like, oh, like
Yeah,
it's a
I
lot
guess
of just,
that's
and that's
interesting.
kind of, I feel like that, I can totally see why English audiences or censors were like, my heavens, like, absolutely not. I just think like it's something, I feel like it very aggressively tackles the whole issue of cheating and infidelity in a way that I just feel like is so direct, and that, is innovative, and it does leave you thinking, kind of, like how you even feel for, like, you're supposed to kind of feel bad for Sam Neill, but then like he's such a dick for most of the movie that it's kind of
Right.
hard to, and that's kind of the, like,
Because then you
Um,
understand her side of it, where it's like, oh God, look how like much of an asshole he is.
yeah, yeah. And then like, is the monster just a representation of like, okay, like he views it as a monster, we view it as a monster, but like is if it's someone that makes her happy, then like that is what it is. I guess it just depends how you feel about her relationship with the monster. If it was truly like, you
Well,
know,
for me,
like,
I guess I have a little bit of a different take on what the monster is because
mhm,
because we do meet the guy that she's having an affair with, and
yeah,
she's willing to kill that guy in like 2 seconds to protect the monster.
yeah,
And the monster is sort of locked away and hidden in a place that nobody else can really look or see.
mm,
And for me, it was just like kind of representative of her protecting their toxic marriage
mm,
in
okay,
itself. Because like she has chances to leave and she never quite does. They seem
hmm,
to agree to it at the beginning, but then she's kind of like, once he's out of the house, she sort of doesn't really know what to do.
yeah,
And that was kind of how I looked at that. That,
mm,
like I said, that could be wrong. Both of these could be wrong. They could both be right. This is kind of one of those
yeah.
movies where you can just kind of like, what do you think? That's fine.
I
Um,
still think I also do think with the setting along the Berlin Wall and him being a spy, I still felt like I was picking up on some sort of themes of like he's supposed to represent like either like imperialism or the West or something, and she's
I
kind
thought
of
that
like
too, but
the
then
gross, nasty, like either the other side, the communist, the socialist, whatever. Like I
so I was watching the movie as we were watching it, kind of thinking that their marriage was symbolic of this like greater political conflict.
yeah.
And I think it's actually the other way around. I think the movie's about the marriage and divorce, and it's set with this city that's split in half.
Mm.
And I think that part of it is supposed to be more symbolic of the marriage than the other way around.
Oh, that's a good point. I like that. I like that. Um
That's all I
yeah.
got. So
Okay.
it's
My question for you is do you think this actually should have been a play because of how theatrical the performances are? I was thinking, could this work as just like a shocking,
so you
like,
think,
'cause so much of it is like kind of scenes where two people are yelling or talking to each other in one place.
yeah, so you're thinking like married couple in their 50s decide like, we haven't had a night out for a while. Let's head down to the Guthrie
Hmm.
and check out this play Possession. And then,
Uh-huh.
like 80% of the way through it, there's just a woman having sex with an octopus on stage.
I think if it was done, I think it could be done artfully. If it
Tastefully.
Yeah, I think it could be done very tastefully. And I think the yelling, I just think that the scenes
Yeah,
where they're
sure.
in the kitchen or in the apartment yelling at each other would work
Lend
so much better
themselves.
on stage.
Sure.
Because
Yeah,
I
I mean, I'm
hated
not going to
being
say no, but
I hated feeling claustrophobically trapped with them in their tiny kitchen or their tiny living room where they're like yelling at each other. It was like, oh my God, get me out of this apartment. I felt like maybe on the stage they can yell at each other and it's more just projecting, you know?
sure. It's just, it never really crossed my mind to think of, okay, a movie that was banned by a full
Oh,
country in the 80s. Let's take, because like a woman has sex with a monster, like let's take that, move it to the stage where people get to perform it in front of us, like over and over and over and over again.
yes. Yes.
So
So your answer
that's
is
what you
yes.
want.
Hmm.
Okay.
The other idea I had is, so the monster, becomes, but at the end there's the shocking reveal that it's been
Yeah.
building itself up and it finally becomes him, and it's the green eyes that give it away, and then
Also
that's
why I think she's like protecting their marriage and the monster eventually turns into him.
yeah, and then also we know that because of the green eyes that there's a version of her too. There's a second version of her that has green eyes. So the monster. So, is there an interpretation, or how do you feel about the interpretation that actually this is kind of a touching story about love and how like enduring love? Because if you think about it, like they both got consumed and like rebuilt by this monster thing, but like it rebuilt it into like what she wanted in her head, like there's the statement that like I've seen the face of God and the other half is you. So it's like a weird like,
Sure.
like this monster creature thing is doing this to me, but its final form is you, my husband, who I love more than anything in the world. Like, and actually, they get to go on and be together. Alien version of monster version of her and monster version of him and poor Bob.
So you think the end of this movie is basically like the inspiration for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind?
Ooh, maybe, yeah.
Where the path you're leading me down right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay,
like
I would
or at
maybe.
least a silver lining. Is there a happy interpretation? Like,
I'm gonna say no for
okay.
one very clear reason. Is this was supposed to be a happy ending? Bob isn't gonna look at those two and then say, "I choose drowning in the bathtub over these two weird fake versions of my parents."
Okay. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think if that's supposed to be a touching ending, then Bob's in the living room with them when the movie ends, and not, you
That's
know.
probably true. Um it also did remind me of Annihilation. The ending of Annihilation.
Oh, how
That
dare you?
no, with
I'm
the
kidding.
kind of assimilation and
Yeah. No,
mirroring and
absolutely that made me think of that.
like yeah,
Annihilation
that
is a movie I like a lot more.
I
So
wonder if Annihilation took some inspiration from this. I
I don't
wonder.
know. You'd have to ask the author of the book.
I would have to ask that. And then last thing, just because they brought it up so much, kind of out of the blue in the last 30 minutes of the movie, did this film change your thoughts about God?
I thought that's where you were going with
Yeah.
this, but the
Yeah.
way you said it was also just very funny. No.
Yeah, me neither. Felt like I'm not sure. That felt like it got peppered in all at once out of nowhere. And it was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was just kind of like halfway through the movie. It was like, we're going to talk about God now. The
And
only
then all
thing
of a
I can
sudden,
think
every
of is
character
like,
had to say something about God.
yeah, for me, the only reason I can really think of having that start showing up is just like guilt over divorce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's all I got for the God stuff. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've kind of already touched on this slightly. We just started talking about it, but all I have for observations and musings is that Bob is such an annoying name for a kid.
Yeah.
And
Doesn't
they
fit
said
at
it
all.
like 180 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just I just found it insanely annoying. Like, why couldn't they have just named the kid like Owen or something?
Yeah, it just didn't fit with the rest of the movie. Has this European aesthetic. It has this kind of European. It just feels like, yeah, he should have been named Owen
It's
or
also
even
just kind of like a bouncy name. Like
it. It's just a bouncy Midwest Americana name that just doesn't. I feel like fit. It should have been, yeah, like it could have been anything fancy and over the
also
top, and it
just
would have made
like
it.
I was thinking about it, like any kid who you call like you just call him Bobby.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, even that.
what kid do you know that like actually you got to call him Bob? It just felt so like I don't know. Every time they said it, it just felt like that can't really be his name, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Every time,
Robert, even Robert or
Robbie,
Robbie.
Rob,
Yeah, Rob. Yeah, but
any other form that name can take.
mhm. Yeah, that was bad. Yeah, I just my only observation was poor Bob for the name and just the outcome of the movie.
For sure.
Um, and then I guess another idea was if he hadn't drowned in the bathtub, spin-off movie for Bob being raised by two
Oh God, where does
assimilant
Bob end up?
creatures. Yeah.
Like Bob as a teenager is definitely shooting heroin.
I feel like he's running away, like especially if they live in Europe or something. He's
Yeah.
like
Oh, he's
he's
just gonna
taking
like
the
hop a
Euro.
train
He's
to
hopping a train and he is out of there at like 17 for sure. He's like,
yeah.
but
So,
that would be
yeah, he's gonna have some problems
that'd be kind of interesting little horror movie, right? Like parents are getting a divorce, they go off, and then they both come back and they're actually happily in love now, and they seem slightly different. And then the slow reveal that they've been replaced by fucking
Well, he can
monsters.
tell. That's why he runs into the bathroom.
I know, but I'm saying in an alternate one where he didn't run in the bathroom and he couldn't tell.
Oh,
Nate,
excuse me. I thought you were
gosh,
just saying if he could tell, but he, lived. I don't know if he lives at the end of the movie or not.
I don't know. He's in that bathtub pretty. I don't know, for a long time.
He's committed
Yeah.
for sure.
As the
All right.
bombs fall all around them.
Do you have
All
anything
right.
else or
Nope.
tidbits? I got
Tidbits
two.
onto the bits.
So the first one, Sam Neill said this is the favorite of his movies that he's been in.
Oh man. Okay.
Which just I kind of go like, come on, Sam Neill.
Yeah. Good for
And
him
the
though.
second one is far more interesting. Carlo Rambaldi designed the creature. He also designed E.T.
Wow.
Yeah. How's that for a tidbit?
That's a tidbit right
That's like
there.
an A+ level.
That is an A+ level tidbit.
Mhm.
Wow.
I thought that was amazing.
ET's evil twin,
Because
the
honestly, the
mimic
creature
monster.
design was phenomenal.
It was. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The way the tentacles moved and everything, and just
Yeah.
yeah, the way they represented kind of the mind control possible aspects of the creature, or what, like, it's interesting.
Or it's like weird eyes that were
It's
like on the side of it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was good. All right. Onto the McCabe coat of excellence.
Onto the McCabe coat of excellence.
There it is.
We are big fans of McCabe and Mrs. Miller here,
Gorgeous.
particularly
Gorgeous
the
coat.
coat. And at the end of each episode or discussion of each movie, we will award said coat to anybody involved with the movie who we deem worthy. We each give our own. We don't have to give out a code of excellence if we don't want to. Sometimes we don't feel like anybody was up to snuff. So, Dylan, are you giving a McCabe code of excellence for a movie that we both found a little underwhelming?
Oh, I came
I'm
really
right. I think
close.
we're gonna totally. I think we're in the exact same headspace right now.
Okay, yeah.
Where it's like I didn't like the movie very much, and generally when that's the case, I'm just not giving anything out. But her performance,
Yep,
is so good.
so good. It lives up to the hype. That part of
Isabelle
the movie.
Adjani's performance is just spectacular.
Yes,
And
Isabelle Adjani for sure.
so I feel like for me, I kind of have to. Just because I'm like it's there with Toni Collette in
Yes.
Hereditary for me, and Mia Farrow in Rosemary's Baby, and Florence Pugh in Midsummer, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some.
Yes.
But it's up there with those. And even though I do not think the movie is excellent, I don't think it's terrible. Just kind of more of a not my cup of tea kind of movie.
Yeah.
But she's phenomenal.
For sure. For sure. No, that's how I feel too. I felt like that
Yep.
her performance was the part of the movie that totally did live up to the hype for me. That scene, and just in general, she kind of outshone a young Sam Neill, and just kind of, even like you said, in a movie that even I didn't even necessarily really like, even when there were parts where I'm like, oh my gosh, they're just gonna like yell at each other again for like the next 2 minutes. She was still really good.
Yeah.
And I also think that this is a very demanding role, because it has to be so intense and you're flying off the cuff, but also what it takes with the monster sex scene, and to kind of to lean into that part of this and have it come off as like cinematic and like something that's going to last, instead of like a cheap kind of like horror movie nudity.
Yeah.
There's the thin line between cheap horror movie nudity and like, oh, this is actually like part of the vision.
Right.
And for her to just really lean into that, nail that, become the kind of face of this movie, the poster, all this kind of iconic imagery, it really had to take quite a lot to nail it. And I thought that she did a fantastic job. Yeah, she was great. She was great. I would give the coat to her for sure.
Totally agree. And then closing statements for me, I've just got glad I saw it. Don't think I'll ever watch it again.
Yep, I have a very bold psychological thriller, which is also how I started off my closing statement of Perfect Blue. But this one, it earns its place as a cinephile cult classic, but it didn't really do it for me personally.
Yeah.
That's really all. That's all I got to say.
All right. I think that's it. Reminder again that our next movie that we'll be discussing is Cure, the Japanese horror movie from 1997, streaming on the Criterion Channel right now. Dylan, you got anything else, or
last thing, just the iconic poster, all this the imagery, and I just saw the tagline on the poster. Pretty good. Is it desire or violation, devotion or bondage? Your hidden fears will be aroused.
Ooh.
I mean, wow.
Yeah.
I
That's,
mean,
yeah, that's the way to sell a movie for sure.
all right. Well, there you go. Yeah, no, I got nothing else. Is it your turn to put a wrap on the show?
It is.
All right, take it away.
I can't exist by myself because I'm afraid of myself, because I'm the maker of my own evil.